here is a December dilemma that it applies even to God-fearing Orthodox Jews, and that is, how are you supposed to greet your Christian counterpart, your neighbor, the checkout person, all of the different people that you encounter? So in our multicultural society today, people will tell you shouldn't even say Merry Christmas because we're supposed to
Happy Holidays.
Supposed to say Happy Holidays because how dare you insinuate that I am a Christian? That's even offensive today in this topsy-turvy world in which we live. But the question becomes, is there any prohibition of wishing someone not just a happy holiday? By the way, if you wish someone a happy holiday, you may be insulting them because maybe they're an atheist, or maybe they're a Muslim or a Hindu or a Buddhist, and they don't have a holiday. So you should just not worry about offending anyone.
That's what Festivus is.
Yeah, Festivus, right. But the bottom line is that you shouldn't worry about offending anyone, because if we obsess about offending people, we'll never get anywhere in life. So our question is, al pi halacha, is it permitted to wish someone a Merry Christmas? Now, the reason why I found this question of interest is because I recently received an email that was an email blast from Professor Mark Shapiro. And he just recently came out with a sefer. In addition to being a very significant scholar of Jewish studies, he's also a Talmud Chacham and he's a Musmach. And over the years, he's written different shilas to different major poskim in various different communities. And many of the tshuvas that were written to his questions were published in the respective svarim of those poskim. So, he wrote to Rav Henkin, and Rav Herzl Henkin responded. He would write a letter to one of the Rishon LeZion, and he would get that response and published. So basically what he did is he put together a new sefer, if anyone wants to borrow it, just let me know, of all of the tshuvas that were written to the questions that he had presented. Serious halachic questions. And I noticed that this was one of the questions that was presented to a Teimani posek, which we'll see, God willing, by the name of Rav Yitzchak Ratzabi, who has a Shilas Utshuvas set of svarim called Olat Yitzchak. And he's considered to be one of the preeminent modern poskim for the Yemenite community. And he was asked this question about making mention, saying the word Christmas and saying Merry Christmas. Now, we know that traditionally, Jews have refrained from using the word Christmas. And what we call it Krachtsmas, and some people call it Nittel. And why is it called Nittel, as in Nittelnacht, Christmas Eve? Why do they call it that? So we'll get to that in just a minute. But you should know that clearly the name Christ is in the word Christmas, and many people would refrain from saying it because it contains the name of their Messiah, the name of their deity. And as we know from the pasuk in Shemos, just the pashut pshat, uvachol asher amarti alechem tishameru, that regarding everything that I have told you, you shall observe. Hashem says, v'shem Elohim achirim lo sazkiru lo yishama al picha. You shall not mention the names of other gods; they shall not be heard on your lips. And of course, that raises the question: what about the names that the Torah mentions, like Baal Peor and Ovin Yidoni? I mean, we read those in the Torah reading. How can we even mention those words if the Torah prohibits us from doing so? So the poskim say those names are the exceptions because the Torah itself informs us that we can say those names. But let's take a look at how the Gemara in Avodah Zarah, Daf Mem Vav Amud Aleph, understands that statement. Matam ulomar v'ibadetem es shema min hamakom hahu. There's another pasuk that talks about all the different ways you're supposed to obliterate and destroy Avodah Zarah. So the Gemara says there's many different statements in that pasuk. What is the phrase v'ibadetem es shema min hamakom hahu? Destroyed their name from the place where you come to, or from Eretz Yisrael. And that teaches me lechanot lashem. That means that there is a mitzvah to give a nickname to the Avodah Zarah. Yachol l'shevach, you might think that it means you're supposed to give a complimentary name. So the Gemara says, l'shevach sal kedaitach? Why would you even think such a thing? Ela yachol lo l'shevach v'lo lignai. But rather, says the Gemara, you might think that you can use a nickname for an avodah zarah, even if it's not derogatory, as long as it's not praise, filled with praise. So therefore, Talmud lomar shaketz tishaketsenu v'ta'iv t'ta'avenu ki cheremhu. Therefore, the Gemara says, no, you're dafka supposed to go out of your way to deride and insult the avodah zarah that you encounter when you come into Eretz Yisrael. So ha-ketzad. So let's give an illustration of this. Ha-yukorin ota Beit Galia. If they call a place of avodah zarah Beit Galia, korin ota Beit Karya. Beit Galia, Rashi says, is a tall place. You should call it Beit Karya, a place which is a pit. Okay? Ein kol, ein kotes. If they call it the eye of all, like that big eye in the pyramid on the dollar bill, whatever that stands for. So if they call it ein kol, you should call it ein kotes. Call it the eye of the thorn, right? In other words, change the name to make it a derogatory name of an avodah zarah. Now that leads us to the term nittel. Where did we get the term nittel for Christmas? So this is just from an article that I found online. In the terminology of those communities, referring to very religious communities, Christmas is referred to as nittel. The simplest explanation of the word is as a variant form of the Latin natalis, as in dies natalis or natale dominus, meaning day of birth. The same word that gives us the French Noël. Okay. However, later generations for whom the original derivation was no longer familiar, subjected to their own imaginative attempts at speculative etymology. The most frequently cited theory traced nittel to the Hebrew word nitla, meaning hanged, a word that could legitimately be applied to a victim of crucifixion. Other writers favored a derivation from Hebrew nital, meaning taken. Though this produces a better similarity of sounds, its connection to Christmas is harder to fathom. Supporters of this reading understood it in the sense of the one who was taken from Judaism or the arrested one, though this designation would apply more appropriately to Easter and not to Christmas. So there's different theories of why we call it nittel, but the bottom line is that in concert with the Gemara that we just mentioned, you're supposed to use a nickname, not use the actual avodah zarah name, and you're supposed to strive to make it a derogatory name for that particular avodah zarah. Now, does that apply to Christmas? Christmas is not an avodah zarah. It's a day of celebration for people who may or may not be ovdei avodah zarah. And we had a whole shiur several years ago about the machlokes rishonim as to whether Christianity for a Gentile is avodah zarah or not. The Rambam held that Christianity for a Gentile is avodah zarah, and a whole host of rishonim, Bahag, especially rishonim who lived in Ashkenazi countries, where Christians were living all around them, paskined that Christianity for a Gentile, which is a type of avodah zarah called shituf, which is where you believe in the God of creation, but you believe in a Godhead, that is to say that there are different facets. It's a unity, which is a multiplicity, which is essentially the Trinity. That belief is considered to be only avodah zarah for a Jew, but it's not avodah zarah for a Gentile. And so therefore, there are multiple questions here. Number one, Christmas, that's not the name of the avodah zarah itself. It's not the name of the deity. It's the name of the holiday. Number two, is Christ a form of is that their avodah zarah God, or is it just the name of the one God that we all believe in that is not avodah zarah for Gentiles, and will that make a difference? Okay, so if you take a look at the derivation of the word Christmas itself, just from Wikipedia, Christmas is a shortened form of Christ's Mass. The word is recorded as Christmas in 1038 and Christus Messe in 1131. Okay, and basically the word Christos is a translation of the Hebrew word Mashiach, or Messiah, meaning anointed, and Masse is from Latin Missa, the celebration of the Eucharist. And that's interesting because the word Mass in Christmas, right, really is the actual avodah zarah ritual. Because Mass, if If you say I'm going to Mass, it means I'm going to an Avodah Zarah ritual where they take the Eucharist. Okay? So if you deem that to be Avodah Zarah, so then mentioning Christmas is a mentioning, in a sense, if you were to break it down in its etymology, would be actually mentioning the name of the actual Avodah Zarah ceremony or ritual. Okay? If that is Avodah Zarah. Okay? Now, the Sefer Pele Yoetz is written in the 18th century. It's an ethical sefer. It's written in encyclopedic form. It's a big, popular bar mitzvah gift. My son was given a copy of Pele Yoetz for his bar mitzvah by our non-Jewish housekeeper. She went down to Miriam's books and she said, I'm looking for a bar mitzvah gift. And they gave her a copy of the Pele Yoetz. She couldn't read it, obviously, but they told her it's a good gift, and that's what she gave him for his bar mitzvah. Interesting. So Pele Yoetz says, so there's in the encyclopedic entry in Pele Yoetz called kinoi, which is to give a nickname to someone or to give a title to someone. We're really just, for our purposes, we really only have to see the second paragraph, but I could not resist giving you a little snippet from the previous paragraph. Uchavar azhara shamanu li zaher biyoter bikriyat shem harabanim shelo likrot otam bachanichatam. He says you have to be very careful about rabbis. Don't call them by just their title. Kemo shenogim ktsat lomar harav Cairo, harav Alshich, harav Algazi v'chadoyme. You shouldn't just say that the Beis Yosef is Rabbi Cairo, or the Alshich is Rabbi Alshich, and the Rit Al-Ghazi is Rabbi Al-Ghazi, but rather Ela Yomar Moreinu Harav Yosef Cairo, Moreinu Harav Reb Moshe Alshich, Ki im yesh isur bishar anashim, because if it's prohibited to dishonor other people, Al achas kama v'kama berabotenu hakedoshim. So let that be a lesson to you all. Anyway, but that's got nothing to do with our shir tonight, but it leads in, right? So he says, V'yesh dvarim shemitzvah lechanot. But there are times where it is a mitzvah to actually use a nickname. And when is that? Kegon ba'avodah zara. Sha'asr lahazkir osa bishma kamo shekoren osa ha'akum. You're not supposed to use the exact same word that the idolaters use for their avodah zarah. And the same thing is for their holidays. You should not use the same name that they use for their holy days. And you should use a derogatory word as a substitute for what they call their holidays. V'rabim ein nizharim be'ein mevin, marod salomar Hashem shekorn hagoyim hu l'shevach avodah zarah, o machmat chisaron yidiyah v'tzarich lizaher. And many people are not careful about this, and they don't even realize that they're slipping up on this, because a lot of people don't even realize that the name of a holiday is named after an idolatry. Okay, so therefore you have to be very careful. Ubifrat b'dabroim hagoyim shelo yuchal lechanot shem shel genai, and this is especially tricky. He says that if you're having a conversation with a Gentile, and you know that to say use a derogatory word for their holy day would be very wrong. He says, obviously you can't do that. Tzarech lizaher legalgel hadvarim shelo yitztarech lahazkir shem shel avodah zara o yemei eidehem shehem nikroim al shem avodah zara shelahem. You have to be careful to be megalgel hadvarim. Basically, roll the conversation in a certain direction so that you avoid mentioning the name of their avodah zara and the name of their avodah zara holiday. Leval ya'avor al masha omra Torah b'shem Elohim achirim lo sazkiru. To fulfill that which the Torah says, that you shall not mention the names of other gods. Now, as will become clear, the Pele Yoetz is telling us what is proper. But you can't infer halacha necessarily from the Pele Yoetz. Pele Yoetz is an ethical writing. It doesn't have necessarily, and again, I hope I'm not being irreverent, but it doesn't have the halachic precision that we would expect from a halacha sefer. So that's really why we have to go a little bit deeper. If we were just to look at the Pele Yoetz, right? My son's going to open up the Pele Yoetz for his bar mitzvah, and he'll read it in the beautiful big letters and the nikudot and everything, and he'll say, of course, there's no shaila. Obviously, it's usur, it's usur, it's usur. But now we have to look really now into the halachic svarim and really get a better analysis of what's going on. So first of all, and also in the 80s, there was a sefer called Sefer Divrei Chachamim. Rabbi Ginsburg wrote it. And it basically, he went around asking Gedolei Yisrael of the time various different shilas. And he would write, and he would record the tshuvas that he got and put it into a sefer. So this is page 217 of this Sefer Divrei Chachamim. She'ela, ha'im tzarich lahazhir shelo lomar et shem oto ha'ish Yeshu, u'ma din hazkara shem chagam Christmas. So the first question he has is, are you allowed to say the word Yeshu or Jesus? And are you allowed to say the word Christmas? So tshuva, Hagon Rav Chaim Pinchas Scheinberg Pasaks, or Rav Scheinberg, who was the big Rosh Yeshiva of Torah Or, Zatzal, Pasak, Shenachon lahazhir shelo lahazkir shemo. It's good to advise others or to warn others not to mention Jesus' name. V'taimo d'shem Elohim lo yizacher al picha. And the reason is because you're not supposed to mention other gods on your lips. V'lachen yesh noagim shelo lomar Christmas, d'choshvim d'zeu gam nikra haskara shemo. And that's why people have a minhag not to say the word Christmas explicitly. They say Krachtzmas or they say Nittel.
Something went wrong. Please try again.
I would appreciate it if everyone could just turn off their phone just for this hour. Just please do me the favor. D'choshvin d'zeu gam nikra haskara shemo, because people consider it also as a mentioning of the name of that idolatry. Mihu midina ein tzarech lahachmir bazeh. But halachically, really, from a halachic standpoint, there's no need for stringency for the word Christmas. De'ein zeh shemo el hashem shel yom edam. Because that's not the name of their God, that's the name of their holiday. So because it's the day of their holiday, it's not halachically usher, but the minhag is not to mention it.
They refer to him as Christ.
Yeah, of course, they refer to him as Christ, but Christmas is not Christ.
Yeah.
Christmas is the name of a holiday. They're not thinking about Christ necessarily, Jesus Christ, when they're thinking about their holiday of Christmas. Okay, so that's what Rav Scheinberg paskind, and let's take a look at some of the other background information before we go into a modern tshuva. The Beis Yosef in Yoredei Siman Kuf Mem Zayin, which is all about the halachos of not giving honor or mentioning avodah zarah. So the Beis Yosef in that siman writes, "Va'aser afilu lahazkira bishma bechinam shelo litzarich." You're not supposed to mention the name of an avodah zarah gratuitously, unless there's a compelling need. And that's based on the Gemara in Avodah Zarah. Shenemar v'shem Elohim achim lo sazkiru shelo yomar adam lachavero shemorli b'tzad Avodah Zarah plonis. The classic example that the Gemara gives is where you shouldn't tell a person, I'll meet you next to the Avodah Zarah place. You mention the name of the church, St. Timothy's, or you mention the name of, the Hindu mosque or whatever it is, okay? It's not a mosque, it's a temple or a shrine, yeah, okay. Now, we skip down a few lines and he writes as follows, V'Rabbeinu Yerucham kasav b'shem ri ki yesh heter acher bizman hazeh. That there's a different heter as far as mentioning names of Avodah Zarah nowadays. Ki nishmoim b'kodshim shelahem hanikrom avon gilyon. Now, there is a holy artifact that Christians have. They're not talking about their actual deity, but they're talking about their artifacts, their sacraments. And what is he referring to when he says Avon Gilyon? This is a play on words, by the way. Avon, from the word sin, Gilyon is a scroll, okay, or a manuscript. What he's referring to is something called the Evangelion, which is the old world way of describing the Gospels. That's what Evangelion is, a Greek word. It means the gospel. And what does the word gospel really mean? It means the message of God. You remember the movie Godspell, or the play? Right? Godspell is gospel. It was a story about Yashka. But the reason it's called Godspell, because that's the Old English term for gospel. Gospel is short for God spell, that God is giving us a message, spelling out a message. Okay? So, ve'ein tovsim bohem Elohus, and they don't ascribe deity to the the Holy Scriptures, that the New Testament essentially, and so therefore there's nothing wrong in mentioning the Evangelion. Ve'afal pi shemazkirim shem shamayim, and even though they mention God in mentioning the word gospel, or Evangelion in Greek, the kavanasim liyeshu hanotzri, and they're thinking when they say God, they're thinking about Jesus of Nazareth, the Nazarene. Mikol makom ein mazkirim shem avodah zarah. But at the end of the day, they're not mentioning avodah zarah when they say the word gospel. So there's nothing wrong with saying that word. V'gam daitem la'ose shamayim va'aretz. And furthermore, when they talk about God, without mentioning the name of an avodah zarah, they're thinking about the creator of heaven and earth. So therefore, and Rabbeinu Yerucham is leading us down a path to say that because Christianity is not avodah zarah for the non-Jew, there's nothing wrong with making mention, certainly, of the artifacts of Christianity. And therefore, ve'afal gav de mishtatfim shem shamayim v'davar acher, even though they are combining a human being with God and creating some kind of trinity, lo matzinu sha'asa ligrom la'acherim l'shatef, we don't find that to cause Gentiles or to assist Gentiles in making mention of shituf, of some kind of trinity, that's not usher. We can't describe God in a trinity format, but it's okay for them. V'gam mishum lifnei iver leka delahusaru b'nei noach ala shituf ad kan l'shono. And there's not even a lifnei iver, because we know that I'm not allowed to cause a Gentile to sin, but it's not a sin for them. Azoy zak Rabbeinu Yerucham. So Rabbeinu Yerucham and many other paskin that Christianity is not avodah zarah for a non-Jew. And it's on that basis that as long as you're not mentioning the deity itself, then it's okay to mention the gospel. You can talk about the New Testament. You can say those words explicitly. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That clarifies the Beis Yosef. Now let's go on to something else. In the Shulchan Aruch, in the same Siman, that was the Beis Yosef. Now if we look in the Shulchan Aruch in Siman Kuf Mem Zayin, he writes explicitly about Chagim, about their holy days. Shem Chagim Shelahem, Shehem Kishmot B'nei Adam, Ein Chashash Lahazkiram. He says, to make mention of pagan holy days that are named after human beings, the Shulchan Aruch says there's absolutely nothing wrong with mentioning those words. So, for example, V'hu shelo yikraim kamo shemazkirim otam ha'ovdei kochavim b'lashon chashivos. But that's provided that you don't use the same name of prominence that is given to them by the idolatrous people. And what the Gra explains, and he says, She'ein asur ela shem shenitin la l'shem elokus, aval shem hejotus, afal pisha asa'u eloah, kevin shebazeh Hashem ein bo elohus va'adnus, v'gam lo nitin lo l'shem kach mutter. The Gra just clarifies, and he says, number one, you're not supposed to give prominence to the name by, in the context of the way that you say it, mention it in some kind of exalted way. But the Gra just clarifies that the reason it's okay to say the name of a pagan holiday, as long as it's not mentioning the name of a deity, even if they deified a human being and made that human being into a deity, but if it's named after a human being or a planet or some other kind of body that's not God, then it's okay. Because it's Dichsiv B'Shem Elohim, B'Shem Elohus Hikbid HaKasav, that it's only if you attach some deification by calling it actually a god. But if you just call it by a formal name that other people have, and that's the name of the holiday, then there's nothing wrong with using that name and making mention of it. V'chein Tanan, Elu Chule Kalanda, Saturnura, Karatasim, She'elu Shmos Hedjotos Hein, Uvakama Makomos Huskar Oso Ish V'Talmid of B'Shas V'Kein Kasav Mordechai. So, mentioning names of Roman holidays, not Festivus, that sounds like a Roman holiday, but Saturnalia, or Kalanda, or Kartasim, these were names of Roman holidays. There's nothing wrong with mentioning those names because they're not named there's no attachment to deification of those names. These are just regular names that are named after planets or named after people, and even though they've deified those places or people or things, nevertheless, they're names of hedjotos, and therefore it's permitted. And furthermore, he says, even Jesus you're allowed to say. And my proof is that Yeshu is mentioned many times in the Gemara. So since Yeshu is mentioned many times in the Gemara, you see that you're allowed to say Jesus. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a person's name. Did they deify Jesus? Sure they did. But it's okay because it was a person's name. Yeshu HaNotzri. Okay? If you use the Spanish pronunciation, you're accomplishing the derogatory. You say, hey, sus, which means, hey, horse. Right? But anyway, but that's something else. Anyway, that's not what I'm poskening. But anyway, the Darchei Tshuva now quotes this Gra in source number 10, and he says that nevertheless the Sefer Chasidim was machmir, and he said, "Afilu b'shem Adam Michael lo yizkor Yisrael lefi divrei hamechaber kan ein chashash lahazkir rak sheyesh lizar shelo yikrim kmo shemazkirim oso ha'akum b'loshen chashivos." He says even using the name Michael, according to the Machaber, is problematic because maybe that was a deified entity, but according to the Gra, the way that he understands it, it's not a problem as long as you don't give it the same kind of chashivus as the way that the Gentiles do by calling it the angel Michael. You can call a person Michael. There's nothing wrong with the name Michael. But anyway, okay. Shulchan Aruch, source number 11. Just one other thing that I wanted to point out. Asr likanes lebeis. Now this regards, wishing someone a Merry Christmas on the day itself of Christmas, which is just another thing that you should just bear in mind. In Siman Kuf Memches Siftes, the Shulchan Aruch writes, "Asur likanes lebeis ha'ovei kochavim b'yom chago v'litein lo shalom." You're not allowed to go into a house of idolatry on his festival and to give him shalom. Now, it doesn't say over here that you're never allowed to go into a Beis Avodah Zarah. It just says you can't go into a Beis Avodah Zarah on the holiday and say shalom aleichem. And Matzah b'chutz mutar, but if you find him outside, you're allowed to say shalom to him. But you should say it to him in a soft tone and with a lowered head. In other words, don't give him the impression that is a celebratory day for you, is essentially what the Shulchan Aruch is suggesting. The Shach now clarifies this, and he writes on that sif in Shulchan Aruch, in source number 12, don't say shalom to him. Kasav b'berek habayis b'shem Orchos Chaim b'shem Haram davka shalom shu shmo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's specifically not supposed to say shalom to him in his shrine. Avol bracha deleka shem leka kpeda ad kan l'shano. But to say I give you a blessing, you're allowed to do even in his house of Avodah Zarah. B'chein mashma ksas b'perish Rashi u'mikol makom tzarich in ksas de b'shas gabi makdim v'yoav shalma v'gabi shalma lamar lo mashma l'chorach v'shem shalma havi b'chlal shalom. All right, there may be a difficulty in reconciling that with the Gemara, but shalom you shouldn't use, especially not on their holy days, if you're going to go into their shrine. But to give him a bracha is for sure okay. Okay, that seems to be very liberal compared to what we do today. Is that our minhag is never to go inside of a church, and that has been a long-standing minhag. But it's important to know that it's a minhag and it's not a binding halacha. It's a minhag Yisrael, which means that we are very strict about it. And if someone were to ask us, can I go to the Sistine Chapel, we will say no, because it is a place of Christian worship. But nevertheless, if there's a compelling reason, let's say you are the ambassador for the Jewish people and you need to meet with the Pope in somewhere where there's a worship going on, and you must meet with him, so then there are extenuating circumstances. The Mechilta is something that I just want us to see very briefly, source number 13, because we're going to see this Mechilta being quoted by Rav Hildesheimer, who was the Rosh Yeshiva in the Berliner Yeshiva, the Wissenschaft Yeshiva, what was it called? Well, it's called the Hildesheimer Academy. B'shem Elohim Achim Lo Sazkiru. So the Mechilta says when the Torah says do not mention the names of other gods, Azhara L'Navi Hamisnavi B'Shem Avodah Zarah. It is a commandment to a prophet who is prophesying in the name of Avodah Zarah, Lefishu Hu Omer because the pasuk says Umeis hanavi hahu onesh shamanu asar minayin tamalomer b'shem elimachim lo saskiru. Basically, the Torah is here only telling us that if a person claims to prophesy on behalf of an idolatry, this is the source that is forbidden. According to the Mechilta, this pasuk is not saying anything about a prohibition of mentioning the name of an avodah zarah for a regular person. And that's a diuk that a person who was corresponding with Rav Hildesheimer wanted to make. So this is a much longer tshuva, but we're just going to see a snippet from it. It's in Siman Kuf Pei from the Sefer Shilas Tshuvas Rabbi Yisrael Hildesheimer, Chelak Yoredeya, Siman Kuf Pei. And the question was asked in Taf Reish Mem Vav, which is 1886. And the question is as follows. Kibalnu lebeis midrashenu malamed chadash. We received in our academy a new teacher. Ubo elai hashmua ki hashem shel oso ha'ish mefurash yotze mipiv shel hamalamed. And it's come to our attention, this is the person asking the shaila to Rav Hildesheimer, that the name of Oso Ha'ish is being uttered explicitly by this teacher. Sha'alti Oso Lama Osa came. And I asked him, why are you doing that? It's gratuitous. Me'achar she'efshel lekatzer belimud divrei hayamim v'lomar rak far noch. Because if you're teaching history and you need to say AD or BC, BC is before Christ. So he was saying, in the year 500 before Christ, this is what happened. So I said to him, why do you have to say before Christ? Just say far, which means before. Or nach, instead of saying anis damino, or adaminai, which is, the year of our Lord, just say nach, after. You don't have to say before Christ, after Christ. Right? You don't have to mention his name. So I asked him, why is he doing that? V'omar ki be'emes osa kain rak ba'akroi ira shem shel oso ha'ish b'kriyas sipur echad b'sefer kriyas letzabuch v'lo ratza ledalgo mipnei shnei talmidim goyim shnimsoim b'socha talmidim. And he said, the truth is, Rebbe, I normally don't mention the name of the Christian God, but it so happened that I was reading some kind of historical account in a book that was used as a textbook or some kind of storybook, and there were two Gentile students in the classroom. I mean, this is a fascinating historical document. This, he calls it the Beis Medrash, but it's not really a Beit Midrash. It's some kind of academy or seminary where they're learning secular studies, and the teacher is saying that we have two students in our academy who are not Jewish, and the teacher says, I was teaching history, and I didn't want to insult these boys, so I read the text as it appeared, where it said before Christ, in the year 500 before Christ, right, or whatever the comparable thing is in German, right? So the question is there any, really what the person who was asking is there any isser of mentioning the name of Jesus or the name of Christ, or both, for a Jew? Can a Jew mention those names? So it's a much longer question, and it's a longer response. We're going to jump in to the last part of the tshuva. So Rav Hildesheimer writes, "B'Gemara nizkar shemo haprati Yeshu, avolo Hashem hamurgal ata shuhu ha'atakat milat Mashiach." So first of all, if we look at the Gemara, we'll notice that the name Jesus is used, but not the name Christ, which is the word Mashiach. Uve'emes me'olam tamei tama karati al hamikilim b'shem zeh, he says, and the truth is, based on the Gemara's example, I don't understand why some people are more medactic not to say Jesus and have no problem saying Christ. He says Jesus is a shem prati. It's the name of a guy, a name of a person. And Christ is Messiah. And so that's the problem, says Rav Hildesheimer. You shouldn't really be using the Christ name. That's number one. Dalet, he says, Kol zehu b'tfus ulevarer ha'inyan b'lashon ktsara v'hava begeder lihislamed ve'en rai ledibur atzmo. So for another point he says is that even if you find in the Gemara that they use the name Jesus, it's just in print. That doesn't and it's teaching us a story that we need to learn. But it's not necessarily indicative. It doesn't necessarily prove to us that you're allowed to mention the name verbally. Because remember, the Torah says, Lo yishama al picha. It's not supposed to be mentioned on in your mouth. So that's point number 2. The next point he says is Sifrei Achronim Shalanu Ruba Deruba Hemi Toshevei Medinot Hanotzrim. Because the person asking him the question was also asking about Muhammad. Is it okay to say the name Muhammad? And so he says, first of all, you should know that most of the Sfarim that we have in our Batei Medrash are from rabbis who write in Christian lands. It's possible that even in Muslim lands they refrained from mentioning the names of Muhammad in their lands as well. By the way, we know that the Rambam called Muhammad Oto HaMishuga. Many times he did not mention him by name. Okay?
He's not a deity there.
He's not a deity. But he's considered to be a Navi Sheker, right? So therefore, that was the reason. וגם באמת חילוק גדול בין אמונת הנוצרים באותו איש שחשבו לאלוקות וישמעאלים שמלום לא הגדילו מחוקק אמונתם יותר מגדר הנביא. And as you correctly point out, Derek, that there's a huge difference between Christianity and Islam. In Christianity, they deify Jesus, and in Islam, they don't deify their prophet. They just say that he is the final prophet. ומה שכתב הר"ן הוא עתק במכתבו, דהד נוהגים התר בשיתוף עם הגוי, הנה מלבד דאיזהו פוסקים ספיר כהגת אשרי סוף פרק כמה דעבודה זרה דרב וחולק, וספיר לי דמותר להשתתף עם הגוי. Now, even though it's questionable in halacha whether you're allowed to enter into a partnership, a business partnership with a Gentile, because you're invariably going to be involved with mentioning his deity's name, or causing him to mention his deity's name, Hine haran svirle de'en goy musar al hashituf upasa ken harama ba'or chayim simen kuf nun vav. He says if he's a Christian partner, it's not a problem, because as the Ran paskins and as many other Rishonim and the Ramah himself paskins, there's no Isser Shituf to ascribe Trinitarian qualities to the God of creation for a Gentile. Achen ayin b'tshuvas maharas sason u'tshuvas me'il tzedakah for primaganim or chaim simin kuf nun vav u'v'shal tshuvas binyan sin chelak aleph simin tezayin. But you have to look into this a little bit further because it's not so pashut. Achen af l'divrei haran yesh li hirhurei dvarim b'inyan shelafanenu. But even according to the Ran, Rav Hildesheimer says, I have some hesitation to be so lenient to say that since there's no prohibition of shituf, there's nothing wrong with causing a Gentile to mention the name of his God. He says, "V'zeh ki lo nuchal lahakrish et hayadua b'chol tfutzot Yisrael ki davar zeh af sheyahivna le de'ena rak midat chasidut." He says, "I'll grant you that it's only perhaps an act of piety, but we know that it is a widespread practice throughout Klal Yisrael. Im kol zeh b'chol mokom hayireim nimnu lahalot shem zel sfatam." God-fearing people do not mention the name of Jesus or Christ. Okay, and therefore we know that if there's a place where you go where people are nohig to be machmir on something, you don't have a right to flippantly undo their chumrah, right? So it's like any situation where people are machmir in a certain practice, you should not try to undo that stringency. He says, furthermore, perhaps the Ran was only lenient to enter into a business association with a Gentile because of the idea that this is your whole parnasa, right? There are many times that the rabbis are lenient when it comes to matters of parnasa. But that doesn't necessarily apply to a malamed in a school who's reading a history book to let him flippantly and for gratuitous reasons just to mention the name of Christ. Right? He says, and certainly in a classroom, where you've got very impressionable children, you should definitely heed the sensitivities of people who are believers, the children of believers, that you should refrain from using the names of Christian deities and icons and things like that. The children shouldn't be listening, shouldn't be hearing those words. So therefore, I give you my bracha, says Rav Hildesheim, that you should use your discretion. And then he says later on, he says, Al chen al kol panim ben shtei hitnagdiyot hamitzirot yesh l'chor ketana. So he says, but the bottom line is that you may have a problem by firing this guy, because if you end up firing him, and I'm sort of interpreting what he's saying, you could get in trouble, because if the Gentiles find out that you fired him because he mentioned the name of Christ, then it's going to create problems. So you have to sort of use finesse in order to know to do the lesser of two evils, is basically what he's saying. Okay. Let us go on to the tshuva that Professor Shapiro was making reference to. It's the tshuva of Sefer Olat Yitzchak that he had presented to Rav Yitzchak Ratzabi, who's, again, as I mentioned, the great modern Teimani posek. This question was presented in Tafshin Nun, 1990. Okay, so it's a tshuva that's almost 30 years old. And you see, he writes, L'chvod Harav Melech Shapiro, Cambridge, Artzot Habrit. So this is when he's a doctoral student, apparently. And Be'inyan Haskarat Shemo Shel Oto Ha'ish Yeshu HaNotzri, I'm not sure what those Rashi Tevot are. Hevi Kvodo Mashakosov B'shut Divrei Chachamim Daf Reish Yud Zayin Os Kufdala B'Shem Hagon Rav Chaim Pinchas Scheinberg Shenachon Lizar Shelo Lahazkir Shemo. So your question was as follows. You asked me, is it okay to mention the name of Jesus the Nazarene? And you had mentioned that from that sefer that we presented from this Rabbi Ginsburg, it seemed that Rav Scheinberg had felt that it's proper to avoid using that name. Mitam v'shem Elohim achim lo sazkiru. V'lochein yesh noagim shelo lomar shem chag shel umos ha'olam Christmas shechoshvim shegam zeh nikra hazkara shemo. And therefore he writes that people refrain from saying the word Christmas because they feel that this is a mentioning of his name. Mihu medina in tzarech lahachmir bazeh de'ein zeh shmo el Hashem yom edam ad kan. And Rav Scheinberg acknowledged that's only a chumrah not to say Christmas because really that's not the name of their deity, that's the name of the holiday. And you, Reb Melech Shapiro, you argue that the whole tshuva is incorrect. Shetzion labir hagra yoredea simin kuf mem zayin sif katan gimel, or sif katan gimel rather. Hainu shasham hevi b'shem, and he quotes everything that the Gra said. That is nothing wrong with mentioning a proper name as long as it's the name of a regular person like Yeshu or Jesus. Is absolutely nothing wrong, the Gra says. And so why should it be usher to mention Yeshu HaNotzri? The Gemara mentions that name. The kasav od shein makom lahatir shem yom edam hanizkar ki tevazu merkeves mishnei milim Christ mashmusa Mashiach v'mas avodah zarah shalem. And you, Mark Shapiro, want to argue that Christmas should taka be usher. In other words, you want to argue pum fakert. Rav Scheinberg wanted to say that it's usher to say Jesus because you're not allowed to mention another deity's name. But it's okay to say Christmas because that's the holiday. That's not the name of their deity. And you, Dr. Shapiro, want to argue just the opposite. You want to say that saying Jesus is perfectly fine, like the Gra says, it's just a proper name of a regular person. And even though they deified him, nevertheless, it's a regular name, so anyone can have the name Yeshu. And as far as Christmas, you want to argue that it's usher because it's a construct, it's a contraction of the two words Christ, which is the Messiah, and Mass, which is the Avodah Zarah ritual. So which one is it? The kasavod she'ein makom lahatir shem yom edam hanizkar ki tevazu merkeves mish. Oh, sorry. The afal pisha Christ ein mashma uso Elohus. Mikol makom halo mavur bahagos maimini shagam adnus aser upashash asar likros Yeshu b'shem Mashiach. He says, I will grant you that the word Messiah does not mean a deity, but even ascribing leadership, adnus, to a false Messiah is aser. And therefore, the argument that you wanted to provide is it should be usher to say the word Christ or any word that is derivative of Christ, such as Christmas. And certainly because the Mass of Christmas is a reference to the actual Eucharist, the actual ritual of Avodah Zarah. He says, "Ulam puk chazi shafilu gedola Yisrael einam nizharim bazeh v'nishar kvodo b'tzarachin." But your question was, but I see even great rabbis today saying Christmas. There's a famous story about two great Roshei Yeshiva in the middle of the 20th century. Someone who was there related the story to me, that there was a driver driving them, and they had both gone to public school in the United States, and they were remembering Christmas carols that they used to sing in public school. They were singing Christmas carols because that's how they were brought up. I mean, it's a tribute to them because they became Gedolei Yisrael even though they grew up and went to public school, right? But the point was that even Gedolei Yisrael have a lot of stuff in their brains that they wish, just like we have stuff in our brains, we wish we could just press the delete key and would be gone. But even Gedolei Yisrael have that. Anyway, but you see that they would mention, they say the word Christmas, so how can you be matter saying the word Christmas? So he says, V'li hakatan ein yediah pi kari inyanim elu. So he says, I'll be honest with you, I'm a Yemenite. What do I know about Christmas? What do I know about Christians? I'm very distant. He's living in Eretz Yisrael. What do I know about these things? I'm very far from all of this. Ki rechokim anu me'emunat hevel shel elu. We're so far from these kinds of religions. Rak hitzatzti in ma'at. So I just looked into it a bit. V'nira la'aniyas daiti shel inyan haskara shemo afal pi shemutar hainu min hadin. So it seems to me that, bless you, that, okay, saying Jesus, you're right. Me'ikar hadin it's mutter. However, v'hagon Rav Chaim Pinchas Scheinberg la'omer ela shenachon lizar dahainu l'chumra. But Rav Scheinberg wasn't saying it's mamish usher to say Jesus. He says it's proper for a Jew to be machmir and to avoid saying that name. Shahalo mefurish b'sefer Chasidim simin taf chaf zayin she'en lahaskir shem Edom Michael v'chulei. That the Sefer Chasidim writes that you're not supposed to mention the name of their holiday, including in that is the name Michael, or if there's a day, St. Michael's Day or something like that. Uchvar kasav al zeh hakneses hagdola shelafi divrei HaShulchan Aruch ein chashash lahazkir v'huva b'darchei tshuva yordeis and kuf mem zayin sivkatan zayin. He says, it's true. According to the Shulchan Aruch, there's no problem. You can mention a St. Michael's Day, or Michael's Day, whatever that holiday was, or is maybe. But nonetheless, the Sefer Chasidim is machmir, that you should not mention a holiday that is observed by pagans. V'lo od ela shebe'erech hashulchan sham siv katan aleph kasav shemidivrei kol haposkim mashma da'afilu shem hejed aser delo kahayireim ayin sham. And furthermore, not everyone is as lenient as the Mechaber who's quoting from Sefer HaYireim. Some say that mentioning non-Jewish holidays is aser even if it's named after a hedjot, even if it's named after a regular person. We'll skip the brackets. Mikol makom lamadnu. He says, the fact that people do not refrain from mentioning his name, that's perfectly halachically justifiable. The kol shekain shehishmitu os ayin mishmo ha'ikari Yeshu, which really ha'ikari is Yeshua. He says, why does the Gemara call him Yeshu when the Christians call him Yeshua with an ayin? He says the reason for that is shehu l'shevach v'kitzruhu l'genai, that really the name Yeshua implies salvation, the Savior. But the Gemara calls his name Yeshu just Yud Shin Vav, which is a derogatory extraction of Yeshua. Why? Because ubifrat l'magamat Rashi Tevot Yimach Shemo v'zichro, because they make the word name Yeshu into Rashi Tevos of Yimach Shemo v'zichro, right? So therefore it has this derogatory connotation, plus it's Rashi Tevos for that. Aval hamachmir tovel of bracha. So really, Me'ikar Hadin, you can say Jesus, okay? But you want to be machmir, a blessing befall you. Va'afilu shem ha'yishmeili Muhammad she'ein shehu ein bo shemetz avodah zara, mikol makom ra'iti etzleinu sheyesh machirim afilu michtov shemo b'teva echad ela machmad. He says, I've seen people be machmir with the name Muhammad, that they will not write it as one name, but they'll divide it into two separate names, Mach and Mad. Okay, v'chein regilim lakanoto b'shem mishuga, and the Rambam also didn't mention him by name. We called him Oto HaMeshuga. Laharchimik min hakiur b'chayotze bo, and he does this in order to distance himself from something that a Jew should not really feel comfortable getting involved in. Skip the brackets again. Omi idach, ma shechatav kvod torato she'asur lahaskir shmo shel yom edam mitam she'asur likrot la'oto ha'ish Mashiach ze'eno. And finally, I disagree with you with your assessment that it should be usher to say the word Christmas because you're using the word Christ, and which means Messiah. I said, I don't agree with you. Me'achar she'en shmo shel yom edam atzma omer shu HaMashiach rachmana litzlan, rach Mashiach stama. He says, because when even if you say that the word Christmas is a derivative of the word Christ, what does the word Christ mean? Messiah. It doesn't mean the Messiah. It means a Messiah. Okay? So, therefore, his argument is, V'lo shani bala hamlitz al des sefer divrei chachamim, de belav hachi kishiyanti bo lifnei zman ma ra'iti kama dvarim delav desam chaninu. He says, I'm not justifying, I'm not here to defend the sefer that you are critical of. The sefer that you quoted from, that we started with, about, Me'ikar Hadin, it's mutter to say the word Christmas. I'm not coming to this conclusion because I feel a need to defend that sefer, because there are a lot of things in that sefer that I find to be inaccurate and that I disagree with. Af shebichlalo hu sefer chashuv v'nechmad, v'arbinyanim shadan bahem, kvar nitbaru b'sifrei achronim. V'ayin od shalos Jewish Mishnah halachos, chelek tesim, and kuf samach tes. And so therefore, basically, the conclusion of the Olat Yitzchak is that, number one, you can certainly say Jesus. To say Christmas, you can certainly say. Not for the reason that was mentioned before, that you're not thinking about the Messiah when you say Christmas, you're just mentioning the name of the holiday. But even though you're thinking of the fact that it's Christmas, nevertheless, his argument is, it's named after their Messiah. It's not my Messiah. It's certainly not the Messiah, but it's their Messiah. It could be he's a false Messiah. So therefore, even Maker Adin, according to his conclusion, you could even say Christ. You could say Jesus Christ in order to identify the deified leader of Christianity. There's nothing al pi halacha that's wrong with it. But why is it that we refrain from doing so? So we've seen a number of different reasons. His language is laharchik min hakiur. He says, why would a Jewish mouth want to pronounce those words for no reason? There's no reason to pronounce them. Rav Hildesheimer's argument is the same idea, that a Jew, and there's minhagim for centuries, not to make mention of these words, not for a Jewish mouth to pronounce these. So why would you want to start going against that tradition? Especially in a classroom where you have impressionable students who may be, who knows what will happen if you mention a lot of those names. And so therefore, the argument is that even though Me'ikar Hadin, you can say Christmas, you can say Jesus, you can say Christ, you can say all of these words, try to avoid it. Now, the Peleiotes, as you saw, was very machmir. Peleiotes that we saw before says, even if you're talking about Christmas, you should try to avoid even saying the word Christmas when you're speaking to your non-Jewish friend. Try to be megalgel hadvarim. Try to move the conversation in a different direction so you don't have to mention it. I don't know that necessarily that would fly in today's world, and certainly we have darchei shalom to contend with. If there are issues of darchei shalom, then certainly we've been able to demonstrate that there's no halachic isser in mentioning these words. So to gratuitously mention them, it seems like the consensus is that if there's no reason to, then why? Why would you? But since there's no halachic prohibition of mentioning them, if you feel compelled because of different circumstances that you find yourself in, then it's perfectly fine to do so if there's a compelling reason. The Mishnah Halachos has a whole tshuva that we're not going to be able to go into now, maybe at some point in the future, where the question that he takes up is, are you allowed to mention street names that are named after, or whole cities that are named after Avodah Zarah? Like, when the terrorist attack happened in Christchurch, New Zealand, that was a little bit jarring. Did you hear what happened in Christchurch? I mean, imagine the rabbi talking about that from the bima. Or where I come from, where every street and every neighborhood is named after a different saint. Santa Monica, San Diego, San Luis Obispo, San Bernardino, right? All of the different places are named after different saints. So the Rav Menashe Klein goes into whether you're allowed to mention those names. And it seems to be that the maskana is that, and by the way, Lubavitchers are very machmir. Lubavitchers in California, when they are in a city that is named after a saint, like for example, Chabad of Santa Monica is called Chabad of Simcha Monica. I don't know if you knew that. Seriously, that's what they call it. Chabad of Simcha Monica. And they do that because the Rebbe felt that you should not mention the name of a saint. But when you call someone a saint, even though it's the name of a city, you're elevating the stature of someone of the other faith, and that he felt is incorrect based on some of the things that we read.
How about when you've got people that you meet, Christopher and Christine and Christian?
Right. So again, there's definitely basis to call them by their names, because we've seen over here, first of all, the biggest heter was from this Rav Ratzabi. He says, even calling someone Christ, you're not saying that they're your Messiah. You're saying that the name itself means Messiah. So you're not deifying them, and you're not saying that they're your Messiah or anyone else's Messiah. They're a Messiah. So that's certainly okay. And Christopher and Christos and Christine, all of these are derivatives, and so they should be perfectly fine as well. Okay? Yeah. Yes, Moshe?
Going to a wedding, if you're invited to a wedding at a church, what do you do?
So
It's a partner, it's a business associate.
Yeah, the tradition is you don't go into the
Or to
church.
a wake, or these things, or you have to go.
Yeah, you can go to a funeral as long as it's not in a
It's at a
church.
funeral home, that's different, but I mean,
Right.
if the funeral's in there,
We never allow people to go into a ceremony that's being held in a church, a religious ceremony, a wedding, a funeral, a baptism. We never allow Jews to go there. Yeah. Yes.
Term Xmas.
Yeah. So Xmas, you'll be surprised to know that the word X is actually more suggestive of their Lord. Take a look at the derivation of Xmas.
That's more
It's right. It's even more problematic, perhaps. That's what some have suggested. That you're certainly not making it better by using Xmas.
So I actually had a situation where I put Xmas in an email, and a Catholic woman came to me very politely and said that's very derogatory. Please don't do that. Please use the full name.
Why is it derogatory?
I have no idea why. This is a Catholic woman.
Uh-huh.
I said, I'm terribly sorry about it.
She was probably ill-informed, I guess.
Yeah, is there a difference between different Catholic sects and between, Presbyterian versus this one versus Lutheranism, or are they all, their houses?
Well, the two you just mentioned are not Catholic. They're
They're
Protestants.
They're Protestants, but it's all under the same, but.
You mean as far as whether it's considered avodah zarah or not? There's definitely. It's definitely not monolithic as far as the various different beliefs, but that would require us to go through a really deep study as to what Catholicism has the most problems as far as the possibility of being real shituf and being real avodah zarah, because they use a lot of iconography in their rituals, but it seems even Catholicism, which is what these Rishonim were referring to, because they were before Protestantism, they were still saying.
Like Mark and Luther and all the Gospels, like to mention their names, is that problematic?
No, it's perfectly fine.
You can mention Paul.